Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas.
Thank you so much, Madam Ranker, and thank you so much to our witnesses for being here today. I've sat and I've listened, and what my colleague, Mr. Krishnamurthy, just talked about was just blatant racism. Like, I'm gonna just call a thing a thing. Like, this administration is racist. That he has always been a racist, and that is what we are enduring in this country. Let me give you some facts behind this racism, and they get mad when I say the things that I say, but I will not stop speaking the truth. Number one, I said that what we were experiencing in this country felt like what I would imagine slave patrols to look like. And frankly, anybody that knows anything about slave patrols, this is exactly what it was like. We're talking about lawless people that are going around with no warrants or anything, and it's all about rounding people up and disappearing them. That is what's currently taking place. And interestingly enough,
she opens with a clear identity and firm greeting. She names the injustice and refuses to be polite about it. She points to a pattern and insists we see it for what it is. She refuses distraction and calls out the administration. By name she connects present harms to a painful history. Her slave patrol analogy is meant to wake people up. She uses moral language to force accountability. She centers witnesses and lived experience in the room. She prepares the listener for evidence and hard details. Her voice balances anger and careful witness. She makes speaking the truth into an act of duty. This opening demands attention and frames the fight.
Even though modern-day policing was born out of slave patrols, when I was speaking with one of my friends who is a federal law enforcement officer, he told me that one of the things that he has observed is that the culture is created at the top. And when I think about it, it absolutely makes sense. If you have somebody at the top that will not tolerate the types of things that we're seeing, then maybe those under you won't do it. But we know that we have a racist at the top. He has called himself the head law enforcement agent in this country, and therefore everybody has decided that it is okay to take off their hoods and mask up as ICE agents. Now, we've talked about how they have hidden themselves, but again, it reminds me of the Klan. That is why I proposed the Clear ID Act, to make them identify themselves, because it is dangerous for law enforcement as well as individuals, because you don't know, especially with ICE going around and doing the things that thugs do.
She describes lawless tactics that erase due process. She shows how fear is manufactured by masked authority. She highlights the origins of policing to explain outcomes. She shares an insider perspective from a federal officer. She argues, culture flows down from leadership to practice. She names the top figure as setting a dangerous tone. She draws a straight line from rhetoric to street behavior. She makes the case that impunity invites violence. She contrasts masks and hoods with the need for transparency. She primes the audience for a legislative fix. Her analysis shifts from anecdote to systemic critique. She forces listeners to evaluate who sets the rules.
They're busting out windows. They're breaking into homes. They're breaking people's arms. This doesn't sound like law enforcement. It sounds like thuggery to me. But just like you can have somebody at the top that sets the tone for ugliness going down, you guys are blessed, because in the city of Chicago, you have a mayor. You have a mayor that has decided that he will not back down. He will not bend to this administration, and instead he will stand up for the people. You have a man of valor that is going up against a villain, and I think that we have to make sure, especially while we're in his city, that we recognize his leadership, because it is invaluable. Now, some people think that this is all about Chicago, but I want people to understand that this cancer is infecting us everywhere, and if you don't think that it can come to your city, well, I've got news for you. You see, we've been talking about the cruel and unusual punishment that is in violation of the 8th Amendment that is being handed out. And honestly, it's a spit in the face of every American.
She introduces the Clear ID Act as a remedy and a test. She frames identification as both safety and accountability. She calls the conduct thuggery. Not policing to shock listeners. She lists violent acts to highlight the stakes. For families, she refuses euphemism and insists on naming the harm she praises local leadership that resists federal overreach. She elevates the Chicago mayor as a counterexample. She casts the conflict as valor against villainy to clarify choice. She warns that local courage matters in national fights. She moves from critique to concrete policy, and praise her rhetoric links law to morality and to everyday safety. She invites the public to weigh leadership and conscience.
That we have an actual convicted felon that feels aggrieved to the extent that he feels like he's owed hundreds of millions of dollars when people are literally dying under our watch. Recently, I just sent a letter, it looks like on October 22nd, to Kristi Noem. And one of the things that I laid out is that we have seen the most detainee deaths in ICE custody in a single year in decades, with 20 deaths in the last 9 months compared to 24 deaths in the past prior 4 years. Now, this week, we learned that an individual who went to the Dallas ICE field office for a routine visit, meaning that they were doing things the quote-unquote right way, they were detained. They knew that this individual had diabetes and required insulin every 2 hours. Despite ICE having been told this, the individual was denied access to their medication for 8 days, resulting in hospitalization.
She widens the lens to show the problem is not local. Only she calls the pattern a cancer to stress urgency and spread. She connects cruel practice to constitutional betrayal. She points out obscene priorities in the face of suffering. She notes a convicted felon gaining millions while people die. She brings data into the argument to move beyond rhetoric. She cites detainee death counts to show a worsening crisis. She names a recent date to make the claim immediate and factual. She frames negligence as a pattern, not an accident. She urges accountability from agency leaders and lawmakers. Her tone mixes moral outrage with investigatory detail. She readies the audience for a concrete, harrowing example.
There are some that say that we are making America great. But to me, it doesn't feel like greatness. It feels like grossness. That's right. And in fact, I want to ask a few questions, and it doesn't matter who answers them. Is it great or gross to go into people's houses and drag them out in the middle of the night?
Gross.
Gross.
Is it great or gross to make people afraid to do something as simple as go to school?
Gross.
Is it great or gross to make hard-working people say, I am too scared to show up to my job?
Gross. Extremely gross.
Thank you so much to each and every one of you for your courage. Thank you so much for showing up. And Miss O, I want to tell you that I understand that your mother is being detained in El Paso. I did go and visit that facility. I want you to know that I am always on my job. Oh, you're back.
She tells a single tragic case to make the systemic personal. She details denial of insulin to show life ending through neglect. She emphasizes routine visits turned into life-threatening detention. She contrasts bureaucratic procedure with human survival needs. She asks the audience to judge whether this is greatness or grossness. She uses repetition to make the moral contrast land hard. She asks simple questions that reveal the cruelty. Plainly, she refuses small talk and forces ethical clarity from listeners. She thanks witnesses and affirms solidarity with families harmed. She names a visit to an El Paso facility as proof of attention. She promises to remain on the job and to keep pushing for change. She closes by calling for courage, compassion, and sustained action.